Hey there. All right, so this video is to explain most of what you are going to be doing in May and the very beginning of June for World Geography. So we, of course, are thinking ahead. Right now, you're working on your travel projects and hopefully getting close to finishing those travel projects so that we can aim for a 100. Remember, there is a rubric in that at the end of the directions so that you can see what is expected to you to get that 100. So after we score that 100 on the travel project, you are going to start your end of year review. So because of SOL testing, this is going to be a recorded review for the most part, but we are going to cover all of your lessons so that you are ready for your final exam in June. So I'm going to go over your actual plan that you see in the OMHS in a little bit, but Mrs. Freed provided this, so I borrowed it. But I borrowed it so that you can see what May and June are going to look like. And if you notice on Mondays and Fridays, you're going to have Nearpod lessons. And each of those lessons are going to have questions or a quiz that goes with it as well. So, if you haven't used Nearpod before, it's very much like Play Pause It. So if you went through the Play Pause It, okay, you'll be perfectly fine on the Nearpod. And the cool thing about Nearpod is you don't need an account. And I'll go through the directions on how that works as we go through this video. But just so you know, Nearpod is an online program. It will use slides, and a few of them also have videos. Now, most of these were already made by Mrs. Freed. So if there is a video, most of them will have Mrs. Freed talking to you, except for lesson number 2, which is me. So there will be a familiar face for lesson 2, but all the other ones are Mrs. Freed, and she has even more energy than I do. So you will be in wonderful hands as you go through these lessons. So notice again, the first 3 weeks of May, you only have lessons on Mondays and Fridays. Now, the cool thing is, too, other than Monday, May 3rd, which you'll have to do this lesson on Monday, May 3rd, the rest of them you can work ahead if you have the time. Now, also keep in mind, you're going to be taking SOL tests during some of these weeks as well. Now, you know your individual schedules. I don't know your SOL testing schedule. So you would have to look up your own schedules. But you have to remember you are going to have SOL tests as well. So that's why the first 3 weeks of May, they're spread out. And you only have 2 lessons each week. Also, notice that the 4th week, you have 3 lessons. But again, very achievable. You have 5 days, but only 3 lessons. So you can do that. And then the last review lesson is going to be on June 1st. And then we start rolling into final exams. So again, the Nearpod lessons are to prepare you for your final exam. And final exam has not been completed yet. So I'm not going to go into any details on that. I'll send that to you at a later date. So here is an example of how your end of year is going to look. You will not be able to open that module until May 3rd. Okay? But when you see it, you'll go into end of year review. And again, May 3rd, the first lesson is going to be available for you. Now, I've talked about a lot of this already, so I'm just going to skim really quick, but please feel free to pause and read everything that is on the screen. Let me focus again. You will have a Nearpod to watch, and there will be some questions to answer on there. But then you will also have a quiz in the OMHS, and that will make more sense again as we go through the video. In order to receive credit each day, you must complete both activities. So make sure you are completing the Nearpod, but then you are also going into the OMHS and taking the quiz. Everybody is expected to take this, and in fact, the quizzes are going to count as a grade. Well, really a combination of the two. because this is going to be an excellent way for you to get last minute review. There's no way that I could go back and reteach everything. So you have to know what sort of study tools are going to work best for you. So that is something that you definitely need to figure out on your own. And then once you get an idea of how studying works for you, or what your best practices are, then if you have questions, definitely ask me and I can help. But these reviews right here are going to be a major thing that will help you. Another thing I would suggest is definitely going through all of your Class Connect notes. So that is something to keep in mind as well. I already said this as well. You will not have a lesson and quiz assigned every day. So you saw the first 3 weeks, it was Monday and Friday. And then it turns into Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then I guess the last one is Tuesday, June 1st, because we have Memorial Day. But just remember that every time you do have a day with assigned work on it, there are 2 items to complete. You complete the Nearpod lesson and you complete the review quiz. So I'm going to keep reiterating that. Nearpod lesson and quiz. So here again is an example from the OMHS. When you look at the first day, you will see a link here. And in this case, you'll actually click on the link to get to Nearpod. These green blobs, they're actually highlighting. They're supposed to be highlighting. But there will be a code entered here. Now, I don't have them there right now, but there will be a code. And on the next slide or 2, I will actually show you where you will put the code in Nearpod. Then when you're finished with the Nearpod itself, you will go back into the OMHS, click on End of Year Review Questions, and it will take you to a multiple choice quiz. You're used to doing that already from attendance quizzes and your content quizzes. And it says this on another slide, but I am just going to make it clear. These quizzes, well, the combination of the Nearpod and the quiz are going to count as content quiz grades. So again, these are for a grade, because I know that tends to be one of your first questions. Well, how does it affect my grade? Well, it affects your grade because it will go in as content quizzes. So just make sure you understand that as well. So this is how your plan, so if you narrow it down to just world geography in the OMHS, this is what your plan will look like. So they look green now, but each area that is green, I went back and highlighted. That is the days where you are going to have a Nearpod lesson and a quiz to go with that lesson. I only highlighted right here because you will see it'll say end of year lesson, in this case number 1, and then it will say that the quiz ends at 11:30. So each day where something is assigned, so here end of year review number 2, you will also have to take the quiz that day. But once again, I know I said this earlier, remember, you can work ahead. So if you have extra time and there is a week where you don't have an SOL test, and on Monday you want to knock out lesson 1 and lesson 2, go ahead. Okay? So again, I would encourage you to work ahead where you can. So 2 slides ago, I showed you where you'll click and it'll take you to Nearpod. So this is what your screen will look like after you click on that link. It will say join a session. There will be a code in the OMHS for you to use to actually join that session. You'll put the code right in there. Okay? Then it'll bring up a screen, welcome to your lesson, and you put in your name. Notice on here we have put in your first and last name as it appears in the OMHS. When we play Kahoots, sometimes people put in their nickname. I might not know your nickname. So that means you won't get credit for doing the Nearpod if I can't figure out who it is. Okay? So keep that in mind. So once again, put your first and last name in as it appears in the OMHS. On your lessons, they will normally start with a slide like this, saying that you're going to have a challenge. We are going to be reviewing SOL standards. Now keep in mind, even though you did not have an SOL test, everything in your final exam is still based on the standards of learning, or the SOLs. So everything is still based on that. So keep that in mind as well. So you'll navigate through the Nearpod activity by clicking on the blue arrows. So blue arrows like you see at the side here. When you finish, you will go back to the OMHS and complete the end of the year review questions for that day. And here's just some more summary information. I've probably, said all this already. End of year review questions. The quizzes are due the day of the lesson. They will count as content quiz grades in your grade book. You will get 2 attempts. So just like a regular content quiz, you will get 2 attempts to get the highest grade possible. And all of the content quizzes, so they will all start on May 3rd. They will all end on, well, that's actually, I'm going to have to check on the ends on June 4th part. Because I think we have it set up. I think we have it set up where it is due the same day, but it might end June 4th. I will clarify that in the email that I send you. Okay? I'll make sure I look at that and clarify that one to you. So let's just be tentative on the June 4th date here. It made sense earlier. It's not making sense right now. So if you have any questions about what you are going to do in the month of May or end of your final test review, anything like that, make sure that you ask. Also, I failed to show you, let me go back here, excuse me as I go through all the slides. I forgot to point out here, if you want to be exempt, so that means you have to have an A to be exempt from the final exam, you will have to have everything finished by the 28th. So just keep that in mind. Even though the last end of year lesson is the 1st, you would have to have everything in by the 28th for exemption from that final exam. Okay? But remember, you have to have an A in the grade book for you to be exempt. All right. So, as always, that was kind of a weird ending since I went back in the video, but email me with questions or concerns that you have, and you know I will get back to you as soon as possible. Take care.